The studio was buzzing with energy. Bright lights shone down on the stage, reflecting off the polished floor and the shiny surfaces of the furniture. Cameras moved silently, capturing every angle, while the audience, seated in neat rows, whispered excitedly among themselves. Tonight was not just any show. It was a night that promised something special. The host, known for his quick humor and sharp wit, paced the stage with his usual confidence. He glanced at the cameras, then at the audience, and gave a smile that made everyone chuckle. It was the kind of smile that suggested, "You're in for a good time." From backstage, the actor walked out. There was a subtle hush as he appeared. His presence didn't demand attention in a loud way, but somehow he commanded it anyway. He moved with calm confidence, greeting the host with a warm handshake and a slight nod to the audience. People leaned forward in their seats. Some whispered, trying to see every detail, the way he smiled, the way he carried himself, the calm aura that seemed to surround him. The host welcomed him with genuine excitement, making jokes about his past roles and teasing him about his mysterious, almost legendary public image. At first, the conversation flowed like water. The host asked light, easy questions, and the actor answered with a mixture of humor and humility. They talked about movies he had worked on, stories from sets, and funny behind-the-scenes moments. The audience laughed along, feeling like they were getting a peek behind the curtain of someone usually so private. He spoke about traveling for different roles, about cities he had visited, and about small moments that had left big impressions on him. There was a human side to him that wasn't always visible in interviews or media stories. He spoke slowly and thoughtfully, choosing his words with care, but never sounding rehearsed. The host, ever the entertainer, tried to keep the pace light. He threw in playful questions, nudging the conversation to humor, to stories that would make the audience laugh. There was a rhythm to it, a dance between the two that felt natural. Laughter echoed through the studio, and for a while everything seemed perfect. Yet, even in this light atmosphere, there was a subtle tension in the air. The audience didn't know it, but certain topics were already being carefully avoided. The actor's eyes sometimes flickered slightly, almost as if he was aware of invisible boundaries. He was mindful of where the conversation could go, but he didn't show discomfort. Instead, he maintained the calm and approachable persona everyone admired. At one point, the host asked him about his approach to his craft. How did he choose roles? What inspired him? The actor paused for a moment, considering. His answers were honest and simple, yet they hinted at deeper ideas. He spoke about connecting with the characters he played, connecting with the audience, and connecting with his own sense of purpose. He didn't need grand words or dramatic gestures. His sincerity was evident, and the audience noticed it. They could sense that this was more than just an actor talking about acting. It was a person reflecting on life, on the little choices that shape who we are. The discussion gradually shifted. The host, naturally curious, asked about life outside of work. The actor spoke about quiet moments, walks in nature, and the things that brought him peace. He didn't boast or try to impress anyone. Instead, he spoke with humility. There was something compelling about the way he described these experiences. The audience listened closely, feeling like they were glimpsing a side of him few people had ever seen. He spoke about learning, about patience, about the importance of kindness. Every word seemed to carry weight, even though he spoke softly. As the conversation deepened, the actor briefly mentioned principles that guided his life. He didn't lecture or preach. He simply acknowledged that there were certain values and beliefs he held dear. The host, sensing a shift in the energy of the room, tried to steer the conversation back to lighter territory. It was subtle, almost invisible, but noticeable to those paying attention. The actor didn't react immediately. He simply nodded, understanding the move, but he didn't let it diminish what he had just shared. There was a quiet strength in his composure. He was willing to speak about what mattered, but he also knew the timing and place. The audience, meanwhile, felt the shift too, even if they didn't fully understand it. There was a change in atmosphere, a brief pause, a moment of stillness, as if everyone collectively sensed that something important was happening beneath the surface of jokes and casual chatter. Some leaned forward, curious, waiting for what might come next. Others watched the subtle interaction, the way two people navigated a delicate balance between humor, entertainment, and truth. Even in the laughter-filled studio, this moment reminded everyone that life and conversation were rarely simple. The actor continued with a calm confidence. He shared small stories from his life that illustrated his ideas without ever sounding heavy-handed. He spoke about people who had influenced him, lessons he had learned, and moments that had shaped him in ways that weren't visible on screen. These stories were personal but relatable. They reminded the audience that everyone has experiences that guide them, that everyone has beliefs that quietly influence their actions. His words were gentle but meaningful, and they resonated more than any scripted punchline could. The host tried to respond with his usual humor, making light of the pause and keeping the audience engaged. But the actor's presence had already shifted the energy. There was a sense of authenticity in the room now, a feeling that the conversation was moving beyond the usual patterns of entertainment. Laughter still came, but it was punctuated with moments of reflection. People in the audience felt like they were witnessing something rare, a conversation that was human, honest, and grounded in real experience. By the end of this first part of the interview, the stage felt like a space where genuine connection was possible. The actor had shared pieces of his life in ways that were approachable and relatable. The host, ever the entertainer, recognized that this wasn't just another celebrity interview. There was substance beneath the smiles and jokes. The audience clapped and laughed, but somewhere beneath the surface, they carried a sense of curiosity and respect for what they had just heard. They were engaged not just by the star's fame, but by his humanity. Even after the cameras shifted and the studio lights highlighted the set, there was a lingering sense of calm and reflection. The actor had entered the room quietly, but he left an impression that would carry on. People would talk about it later, not just the funny moments or the memorable lines, but the way he spoke with clarity and quiet confidence. He had reminded them that even in spaces designed for entertainment, real human stories could shine through. It was a beginning, a part of a journey that promised more. Meaningful conversation in the moments yet to come. The first part of the interview had done more than entertain. It had set the stage for honesty, curiosity, and respect. It reminded the audience that behind every public persona, there is a human being navigating life with values, beliefs, and experiences that shape who they are. And as the cameras moved to the next shot, the energy in the studio was a mix of excitement and anticipation. Everyone knew they were witnessing something memorable. The actor's presence was subtle yet unmistakable. It wasn't about performance. It was about connection. And in that connection, the audience found themselves leaning in, eager for what would come next. By the time part one of the interview ended, viewers at home and in the studio alike had experienced a rare moment of authenticity. It was clear that the conversation could go in many directions, but one thing was certain: the stage had been set for honesty, courage, and humanity. The audience felt lucky to be present. And as the actor and host exchanged final words for this segment, there was a quiet understanding that this was not just another night of entertainment. It was a glimpse into life as it truly was: complex, simple, human, and unforgettable. As the interview continued, the energy in the studio remained high, but there was a subtle change in the atmosphere. The laughter was still there, but it now carried a sense of curiosity. The actor had begun to speak more about himself, not the roles he played or the movies he was in, but the small values and principles that guided his life. At first it was light and almost casual, like sharing a small piece of a diary with a friend. But gradually the conversation started to move into a space that was deeper and more meaningful. The host, noticing this shift, leaned forward slightly, his voice still warm but with a hint of caution. He asked a question about personal philosophy, something that seemed harmless but had the potential to touch on beliefs the actor held dear. The actor took a small pause before answering. He didn't seem nervous. He didn't seem defensive. Instead, he spoke with calm thoughtfulness, choosing words that were simple but carried weight. He talked about how people make decisions based on what they believe is right, about how life can feel complicated, and about the ways personal values guide choices in small, everyday moments. The audience listened closely. Some were nodding, others were silent, leaning forward in their seats, drawn in by the actor's sincerity. There was something magnetic about the way he spoke, not because he was famous, but because he was human in the truest sense. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. He wasn't putting on a show. He was simply sharing pieces of himself in a way that felt honest and real. Every sentence, every pause, carried a gentle strength that made the room quiet. Even as the cameras rolled and the lights shone brightly, the host, sensing the weight of the moment, tried to respond lightly, making a small joke or two to keep the atmosphere familiar. The audience laughed, but it was softer now, mixed with attentiveness. They could sense that something more was happening, that the conversation was touching on ideas that mattered to both the speaker and those listening. The actor didn't react to the jokes in any defensive way. He smiled politely, acknowledging them, but then returned to his thoughts, clearly indicating that he had more to say, that this was an important moment for him. Gradually, the actor began to hint at ideas that were even more personal. He spoke about how he approached challenges in life, how he stayed true to what felt right, and how he avoided compromising his sense of integrity. His words were not loud or forceful, but quiet and steady. It was as if he was opening a door for the audience to peek inside his world without demanding that they step inside. He shared stories of small victories and learning experiences, moments where he had chosen to act according to his beliefs even when it wasn't easy. These stories were relatable. They reminded the audience that everyone faces challenges, and that staying true to oneself is often a difficult yet rewarding choice. The host, realizing that the conversation was moving into deeper territory, attempted to redirect slightly. He asked a question that seemed neutral but carried the intention of keeping the topic light. The actor paused again, sensing the subtle redirection. He didn't get frustrated. He didn't interrupt. Instead, he chose his next words carefully. There was a quiet confidence in his voice, a calmness that filled the room. He spoke about the importance of understanding others' perspectives, of showing respect even when opinions differ, and of finding strength in one's own beliefs without forcing them on anyone else. This response was brief, but it carried impact. The audience felt the sincerity behind his words. Even those who were unfamiliar with his personal views could understand the message, that living according to one's principles was a matter of inner integrity, not external validation. The host paused for a moment, perhaps realizing that the conversation had taken a turn that could not be hurried. There was a quiet acknowledgement, almost imperceptible, that the actor had set a tone of reflection and seriousness. Even within the playful environment of a talk show, the subtle tension in the room grew as the actor shared a small anecdote from his life, a moment that revealed how he navigated personal choices when faced with pressure. He spoke about times when others expected him to act in a way that didn't feel right and how he quietly chose his own path. There was no drama, no accusation, no anger, just a simple, honest recounting of experience. The audience was captivated. They were drawn not to the celebrity, but to the human story. The universal truth that anyone could relate to, that life often asks us to make difficult choices, and that staying true to oneself requires courage. The host tried again to keep the conversation flowing toward lighter topics, perhaps sensing that this was about to become an uncomfortable space for television entertainment. He made small jokes, laughed, and complimented the actor's calm demeanor. The actor smiled, polite but unwavering, and then gently returned to his thoughts. He spoke about the need to respect individual choices, to avoid judgment, and to recognize that everyone's journey is unique. His words were simple, almost poetic in their clarity, and they resonated beyond the immediate topic. The audience felt it. There was a hush, a collective attention that wasn't there before. People in the studio were listening not just to what he was saying, but how he said it honestly, kindly, and with quiet strength. Some viewers at home, watching the live broadcast, might have thought it was just another celebrity sharing personal reflections. But there was more to it than that. The actor was walking a delicate line, speaking about personal beliefs in a space that was designed for humor and entertainment. And yet he did so without confrontation, without tension, and without losing the warmth that had made him relatable from the start. He had found a balance between honesty and diplomacy, between openness and respect, and it was visible in every gesture, every pause, every calm word he spoke. As the conversation continued, the audience began to sense the subtle power in what was happening. There was no shouting, no argument, no conflict. Instead, there was a quiet tension that held everyone's attention. The actor was asserting the importance of his beliefs without forcing them on anyone, and the host was navigating the situation with both humor and caution. It was a dance of sorts, a careful balance between entertainment and genuine conversation, between curiosity and respect, between personal truth and public expectation. The actor shared another personal story, this one about a time when he had been asked to conform to someone else's expectations in a professional setting. He spoke about feeling the weight of the moment, about the temptation to give in, and about the small but firm decision he made to stay true to what he believed. The audience could feel the authenticity in his words. They were not grandiose tales of heroism, but small, human moments that everyone could understand. The actor's voice was steady, his tone gentle, and the story felt real, not scripted. It reminded viewers that integrity is often found in quiet decisions, not dramatic declarations. By now, the audience in the studio was fully engaged. People were leaning forward, nodding, and holding their attention on every word. Even the host, seasoned in handling live television, seemed momentarily caught in the gravity of the actor's reflections. He smiled, laughed softly, but also allowed space for the actor to express himself. There was an unspoken agreement in the room. This was a conversation worth listening to, a moment worth respecting. The cameras rolled on, capturing the subtle shifts in expression, the quiet nods of understanding, and the gentle power of a conversation that was deeper than anyone had expected. The actor concluded this part of the discussion with a final reflection for the segment. He spoke about the importance of kindness, of empathy, and of living a life that felt true to one's values. He reminded the audience that even in small actions, in quiet moments, people can make choices that reflect who they are and what they believe in. It wasn't a sermon, it wasn't a lecture, it was simply a human perspective, delivered calmly and with thoughtfulness. The audience responded with applause, not just for the actor, but for the honesty and authenticity of the moment. As part 2 of the interview came to a close, the studio felt different from when the actor had first walked on stage. There was a quiet respect in the air, a sense that the conversation had moved beyond the usual boundaries of a talk show. The audience had been drawn in by something deeper than jokes or stories from movies. They had been invited into a glimpse of the actor's inner world, a glimpse of his values, his thought process, and the calm strength with which he navigated life's pressures, even as the cameras prepared to cut to a commercial break. There was a sense that the discussion had only just begun. Part 2 had set the stage for a moment of truth, a turning point where honesty and belief might collide with expectation. And the audience, both in the studio and at home, felt a mixture of curiosity and anticipation. They were eager to see how the conversation would unfold next, knowing that the calm confidence of the actor had already made this a night to remember. The energy in the studio remained charged, but it was no longer just playful. It was thoughtful. It was reflective. It was human. And as the host and actor exchanged words to transition the segment, there was an understanding that what had just been shared would linger in the minds of the audience long after the lights dimmed and the cameras stopped rolling. The actor had spoken with quiet power, with clarity and care, and the conversation had moved beyond simple stories and light laughter. The actor's calm presence had set a reflective tone, and the audience could feel it. There was an air of anticipation, almost like the room was holding its breath, waiting to see what would come next. The host, aware of this subtle change, leaned in slightly, smiling as he tried to maintain his usual energy, but there was a noticeable pause in his voice. The easy jokes and casual banter of earlier moments had given way to something more delicate, something real. The host asked a question that seemed simple on the surface, but it carried more weight than he might have realized. He gently nudged the conversation toward topics that the actor had not openly discussed in public before. The actor paused, his calm demeanor unchanged, but there was a flicker of awareness in his eyes. He could feel the subtle shift in tone, the pressure of the moment. It wasn't harsh or aggressive, but it was clear that the host was trying to guide the conversation in a direction that would be entertaining for the audience. While also testing boundaries, the actor did not react with anger or defensiveness. Instead, he listened carefully, giving himself a moment before responding. When he finally spoke, his voice was steady, warm, and thoughtful. He acknowledged the question without feeling forced to answer in a way that pleased anyone but himself. He shared a simple reflection about life and belief, emphasizing the importance of personal integrity and thoughtful decision-making. His words were calm, clear, and respectful, but they carried weight in a way that immediately made the audience lean in closer. For a brief moment, the studio felt quieter. Laughter had faded into attentive silence. People in the audience sensed that the conversation had shifted into serious territory. They were no longer simply watching a celebrity share funny stories or charming anecdotes. They were witnessing someone express core truths about who he was and what mattered to him. The host tried to respond with a small, casual comment, but even he paused. Realizing that the actor's words had created a moment that couldn't be hurried or dismissed, the actor continued, speaking about the way personal beliefs can guide everyday decisions. He emphasized that it wasn't about convincing anyone else to agree, but about living authentically and thoughtfully. He used examples from ordinary life moments when small choices had a big impact, moments when doing what felt right required patience or courage. There was no drama, no exaggeration, just simple human experiences. The audience, both in the studio and at home, felt a connection to what he was saying. It wasn't about fame or celebrity. It was about honesty and humanity. As the host pressed on, attempting to keep the conversation within the bounds of entertainment, the actor remained composed. There was a subtle tension now, a gentle push and pull between the natural curiosity of the host and the actor's desire to speak with integrity. The audience could sense the push, but they also felt the actor's quiet strength. He didn't shout or argue. He simply held his ground with calm clarity. Every word was measured, every pause intentional, and the effect was powerful. The actor shared another small story from his life, illustrating a time when he had faced subtle pressure to conform. He spoke about feeling the weight of expectations, about the temptation to stay silent or follow the crowd, and about the conscious choice to act according to his principles instead. His voice did not waver. There was no need for theatrics. The story itself was enough to convey the courage it took to stay true to oneself. The audience could feel it in the room, a shared recognition that integrity often comes quietly, not loudly. The host, sensing the audience's engagement and the subtle intensity of the moment, tried to redirect slightly, making light of the pause with a small joke. The actor smiled politely but did not let the humor distract from the point he wanted to make. Instead, he carefully returned to his thoughts, speaking about respect, understanding, and the importance of allowing space for different perspectives. He emphasized that one could be honest and firm in personal beliefs without disrespecting or diminishing others. His words were simple, but they struck a chord. There was a sense in the studio that something meaningful was unfolding. The audience sat closer in their seats, some leaning forward, some holding their breath, all caught in the quiet intensity of the conversation. The cameras rolled on, capturing every subtle gesture, the tilt of the head, the pause before a word, the gentle smile that accompanied a serious point. Even the host seemed momentarily caught in the gravity of the exchange, balancing the desire to entertain with the respect for the truth being shared. The actor then spoke about the importance of silence, of choosing words carefully, and of knowing when it is necessary to speak and when it is necessary to listen. He shared that in life many moments are filled with subtle pressures, expectations from society, from colleagues, from friends, but the quiet decisions we make define who we are more than any loud declaration. The audience felt the honesty in his words. They recognized the universal truth behind them, that life often challenges us in small ways and that courage can be quiet. Yet powerful. As the conversation continued, the subtle tension grew. The host asked one more question that touched on personal philosophy, testing the boundaries of the conversation even further. The actor did not flinch. He acknowledged the question and spoke with clarity about the importance of standing by one's values. He emphasized that these beliefs were not meant to control others or to create division, but to guide one's own life with integrity. His tone was calm, firm, and respectful, and the audience responded with quiet attentiveness. Every eye was on him, and every listener could sense the weight of the moment. The actor's words began to have a visible impact. The host, who had started the segment with lighthearted humor and playful questions, now appeared thoughtful, almost reflective. There was a subtle shift in his demeanor, as though he recognized the depth of what was being said. The audience felt it too. Laughter was no longer the primary response. Instead, there was a mixture of respect, curiosity, and reflection. People could sense that they were witnessing a moment that was both rare and genuine. Moment where honesty and belief intersected in a public space, and where the power of calm, composed words held sway over spectacle. The actor shared another story, small but meaningful, about a time when he had been challenged on his choices. He spoke of the internal struggle, the quiet determination required to stay true to himself, and the relief and satisfaction that came from making the right choice for his own conscience. He did not dramatize it. He did not seek admiration. He simply spoke of his experience in a human, relatable way. The audience could feel the authenticity in every word, and it resonated with everyone watching. The host attempted once more to shift the conversation, using humor and familiar energy to lighten the tension. The actor smiled politely but remained focused on his message. He spoke about the importance of courage in everyday life, the small acts of honesty, the quiet decisions that define character, the choices made without the need for recognition. His words were simple and natural, yet they carried a subtle power that left the audience engaged, reflective, and moved. By now, the audience had fully shifted their attention from light entertainment to deep listening. They were no longer just observing a celebrity. They were witnessing a person expressing core values with calm confidence. There was an energy in the room that combined admiration, respect, and introspection. Even those familiar with talk show dynamics could sense that this moment was different. It was human, it was real, and it was unforgettable. As part 3 of the interview progressed, the actor emphasized one key idea, the power of standing firm without aggression. He explained that one does not need to dominate a conversation or shout to be heard. Calm, honest words spoken from experience and conviction can have a profound impact. The audience absorbed every word. The studio lights, the cameras, and even the hum of the audience became secondary to the quiet intensity of the conversation. Finally, as the segment neared its close, the actor reflected on the importance of respect and understanding. He spoke about listening as much as speaking, about allowing space for dialogue, and about the human need for connection without judgment. The host, now more contemplative than playful, acknowledged the depth of the discussion. The audience responded with thoughtful applause, recognizing that this was a rare instance of authenticity in a space designed for entertainment. Part 3 ended with a sense of anticipation. The quiet tension, the meaningful exchanges, and the calm authority of the actor had set the stage for a pivotal moment yet to come. The audience felt it. They knew the conversation had reached a turning point. And even as the cameras shifted to the next segment, the energy in the studio remained charged with respect, curiosity, and anticipation for what would happen next. The actor had shown that truth, calmness, and integrity could speak louder than spectacle, and that was a lesson the audience would not soon forget. The studio was quiet now, but not in a tense or uncomfortable way. The calm that had settled over the audience was different from the earlier laughter and chatter. It was a quiet attentiveness, a kind of focused energy that happens when people sense that something important is about to happen. The actor, already composed and thoughtful, seemed fully aware of the shift. He didn't rush, he didn't gesture dramatically, and he didn't need to. His presence alone drew attention, and the audience leaned in, waiting to hear his next words. The host, aware that the conversation had moved into deeper territory, smiled, but there was an unusual pause in his voice. He asked a question that touched on personal beliefs more directly than before. It was a careful question, polite yet probing, trying to explore boundaries without causing confrontation. The audience could sense the subtle pressure of the moment. All eyes were on the actor. He remained still for a moment, his expression calm and open. There was no hesitation, but a clear awareness of the gravity of what he was about to say when he began to speak. His tone was steady and soft, but each word carried clarity and intent. He spoke about living honestly, about values that guide actions quietly but firmly, and about the importance of understanding life beyond appearances. His words were simple yet profound. They were not meant to lecture, and they were not meant to impress. They were meant to convey a truth that mattered deeply to him. The audience, both in the studio and at home, could feel the sincerity behind every sentence. As he continued, he shared a personal reflection about staying true to oneself, even when it is difficult. He described moments when he had faced pressure to remain silent or conform, moments when doing the right thing was challenging but necessary. He spoke about integrity as a quiet force, not something loud or confrontational. His words were human, relatable, and honest. There was no drama, no exaggeration, just an authentic sharing of experiences that reflected the choices he had made and the principles he lived by. The host, trying to keep the energy flowing, interjected with a light comment. But the actor, without raising his voice or showing any irritation, gently returned to the point. He spoke about the importance of dialogue, of allowing people to express themselves without fear, and of recognizing the humanity in everyone regardless of their perspective. The audience felt the depth of his words. There was a noticeable hush in the studio, as if the conversation had transcended entertainment and touched something more essential about human life. He then told a story that drew the audience even closer. It was a small, personal story, but it illustrated a universal truth, that courage often shows up in quiet moments, in decisions made without applause or recognition. He shared how he had sometimes felt unseen or misunderstood when making choices that aligned with his beliefs. Yet, he explained, it was the quiet commitment to those values that gave him peace and a sense of purpose. The audience responded not with laughter, but with a deep, empathetic attentiveness. People nodded, some held their breath, sensing the authenticity behind his voice. The host attempted to respond, smiling and speaking as though trying to lighten the moment. But it was clear that the conversation had shifted in a way that could not be rushed. The actor's calm and deliberate approach made it impossible for the conversation to be hurried along with jokes or quick remarks. The studio audience remained fully engaged. Even the staff behind the cameras seemed to pause, silently acknowledging the significance of what was unfolding. This was more than a celebrity interview. It was a human exchange about truth, courage, and integrity. The actor continued with clarity, speaking about respect, how it is earned not through fame or power, but through consistent action and genuine care. He emphasized that personal beliefs should not be used to dominate or belittle others, but to guide one's own life. The audience absorbed every word, recognizing the simplicity yet profoundness of his message. His voice was steady and his demeanor was approachable, making it easy for viewers to connect with him on a human level. Then came the moment that would mark the segment in the minds of the audience forever. The actor addressed the idea of being pressured to stay silent about personal beliefs, explaining that silence can feel safe but does not always reflect honesty. He spoke with gentle firmness, conveying that expressing one's convictions does not require confrontation, but it does require courage. His words were calm, but their impact was undeniable. The studio fell into a reverent silence. Even the host, known for his quick wit and control of the stage, paused. Visibly considering the gravity of what had just been said, he continued, illustrating his point with simple yet powerful examples. He spoke of small acts of courage, the choices people make when standing up for what is right, even when it is uncomfortable. He spoke of personal experiences in a way that was relatable, emphasizing that integrity and authenticity matter more than pleasing others or avoiding conflict. The audience could feel the quiet intensity in the room. Sensing that these words were not rehearsed for impact, but spoken from genuine experience and reflection, the host tried once again to interject with humor, attempting to steer the conversation back to lighthearted territory. But the actor, without any tension or frustration, simply nodded politely and returned to his thoughts. He spoke about the importance of listening as much as speaking, about patience, and about finding balance between self-expression and respect for others. His words resonated with everyone present, leaving a sense of calm but powerful reflection. The audience realized that they were witnessing a rare kind of strength, a strength that came not from authority or volume, but from quiet, unwavering authenticity. He then paused for a moment, letting his words sink in. The silence in the studio was full of attention and respect. The audience could almost feel the weight of each statement, the deliberate intention behind each sentence. There was no need for theatrics. The power of the moment was not in performance, but in presence. Every listener sensed the authenticity of the actor, the human connection being built in real time, and the courage it takes to speak honestly in a space designed for entertainment. The actor concluded this segment of the interview by emphasizing the central point of his message, that being true to oneself, even under subtle pressures, is not an act of defiance but an act of honesty. He spoke of the quiet empowerment that comes from choosing integrity over convenience, and how such choices can ripple outward in ways unseen but meaningful. The audience responded with attentive silence first, followed by applause that was genuine, thoughtful, and deeply felt. There was no laughter or forced cheer, just sincere recognition of the truth in what had been shared. Even the host, seasoned in managing live television, seemed affected. He adjusted his tone, slowed his pace, and allowed space for reflection. It was clear that the words spoken had shifted the dynamic of the show. What had begun as a lighthearted conversation had transformed into something significant. The actor's calm yet powerful statements had reminded everyone in the room and those watching at home that honesty, courage, and authenticity hold far more weight than theatrics or humor. The segment ended, but the energy in the studio lingered. The audience remained captivated, talking quietly among themselves, reflecting on what had just been said. Cameras cut to commercial, but the sense of impact was unmistakable. People understood that this was not just another interview. It was a moment of human connection, a demonstration of quiet strength, and a reminder that truth can be expressed gently yet powerfully. For viewers at home, clips of the exchange would circulate later, sparking conversation about integrity, courage, and the subtle power of calm confidence. Some would discuss the actor's ability to remain composed under subtle pressure. Others would reflect on the quiet dignity of speaking one's truth in a public space. Regardless of perspective, the consensus was clear. This was a rare moment in television. A moment where words, honesty, and humanity intersected in a way that left a lasting impression. By the end of Part 4, it was clear that the actor's calm, powerful words had not only answered the questions posed to him, but had also reshaped the tone of the entire conversation. The audience, both live and virtual, had witnessed the impact of measured, thoughtful speech, a reminder that sometimes the most powerful statements are made not with volume or aggression, but with presence, clarity, and authenticity. The studio lights reflected softly on the set, capturing the quiet intensity, the human connection, and the lingering respect that filled the room. The actor had shown, without drama or spectacle, that integrity, honesty, and courage could command attention, even in a space built for entertainment. And as the cameras prepared to transition to the next segment, it was clear that the audience would carry the lesson with them: the power of quiet truth, the importance of standing by one's principles, and the human ability to connect deeply through honesty and calm conviction. The segment had ended, but the energy in the studio lingered. People were still talking quietly among themselves, reflecting on what had just happened. The laughter of earlier moments had faded, replaced by thoughtful expressions, gentle nods, and a sense of awe. What they had witnessed was more than an interview. It was a conversation about honesty, courage, and staying true to oneself. The actor had spoken with calm authority, and it had resonated deeply with everyone in the room. Even the host, experienced in steering conversations and entertaining audiences, seemed affected. There was a pause, a quiet moment where the gravity of the discussion settled over the set. The audience members slowly began to applaud, at first softly, then more warmly. It was not the kind of applause that comes from scripted moments or celebrity appearances. It was genuine, heartfelt, and full of respect. People were acknowledging the courage it takes to speak honestly, the quiet strength that comes from staying true to personal beliefs, and the humanity that had shone through every word. Some viewers in the studio whispered to each other, sharing their admiration for the actor's calm composure and thoughtful insights. Others reflected silently, feeling inspired by the simple yet profound message of integrity. Backstage, the crew and producers exchanged looks. They had seen countless interviews, many filled with humor, theatrics, or dramatic moments, but this was different. The actor had created a space where honesty and reflection could exist without tension, without argument, and without spectacle. His words had not only addressed the questions asked, but had also subtly shifted the energy of the room. It was a quiet kind of influence, one that left a lasting impression on everyone present. Even the host seemed to recognize that the conversation had reached a point of significance beyond the usual format of the show. As the cameras continued to roll, capturing the reactions of the audience, the actor offered a few final thoughts. He spoke about the value of connection, the importance of listening as well as speaking, and the way small, thoughtful actions can ripple outward in ways unseen. His words were simple, yet they carried depth. He reminded the audience that standing by one's principles does not have to be confrontational. It can be quiet, deliberate, and thoughtful. And yet, even in its subtlety, it can be powerful enough to influence minds, hearts, and conversations long after the moment has passed. The host, now more reflective than playful, asked a closing question about lessons learned and advice for viewers. The actor smiled gently, appreciating the chance to share one final message. He spoke about patience, kindness, and the importance of remaining grounded, even in public spaces where one might feel pressure to conform or entertain. He emphasized that life is full of small choices, each of which can reflect one's values and integrity. His voice was calm, measured, and sincere. The audience felt it, the authenticity in his tone, the humility behind his words, and the quiet confidence that made every sentence matter. Outside the studio, viewers at home were equally captivated. Clips of the interview began to circulate across social media almost immediately. People shared moments that resonated with them, the calm explanations, the gentle strength, and the authenticity of his responses. Some highlighted the actor's ability to remain composed under subtle pressure. Others discussed the universal messages embedded in his words, the importance of staying true to oneself, the power of quiet courage, and the human need for connection and understanding. Across the internet, conversations sparked organically. Fueled by the genuine nature of what had been shared, critics and commentators alike weighed in, noting that the interview had defied the typical format of a late-night show. Instead of relying solely on humor, spectacle, or celebrity allure, the conversation had been driven by honesty and integrity. Many praised the actor for his calm composure, his thoughtful communication, and his ability to convey meaningful messages without forcing them on anyone. The discussion became more than entertainment. It became a source of reflection, inspiration, and dialogue for people of all ages. Back in the studio, the audience lingered for a few moments, reluctant to leave. The applause faded, but the sense of connection remained. People turned to each other, sharing thoughts quietly, expressing admiration for the courage and authenticity they had witnessed. There was a shared understanding that they had just experienced something rare, a conversation that combined simplicity, sincerity, and human insight in a way that was both memorable and meaningful. The actor had reminded them that words spoken with calm clarity and authenticity can leave a lasting impression that outshines performance or spectacle. The host reflected on the interview as well. He acknowledged, both privately and on air, that the moment had been extraordinary. Even though he was known for steering lively, humorous discussions, he recognized the value of allowing space for genuine expression. He realized that sometimes the most impactful moments on television are not those filled with dramatic exchanges or carefully rehearsed lines, but those that arise naturally from human truth, courage, and honesty. The interview had created such a moment, and it would be remembered as one of the most meaningful segments in recent years. In the days that followed, the impact of the interview continued to unfold. Clips and quotes were shared widely, not as a form of gossip or spectacle, but as lessons and reflections. People discussed how they could apply the principles demonstrated, speaking with honesty, remaining calm under pressure, and choosing integrity even when it is difficult. Some viewers shared personal stories about moments when they, too, had faced pressure to stay silent or conform. The conversation sparked by the interview had become a space for reflection, empathy, and inspiration, showing that one person's calm courage can ripple outward and influence many others. The actor's words had also inspired thoughtful discussions about media, interviews, and the way public figures navigate expectations. Experts and commentators reflected on the importance of providing space for authentic conversation, noting that the show had allowed the actor to speak without interruption, judgment, or manipulation. The result was a rare moment of clarity and authenticity that resonated beyond the studio walls. People began to see interviews not just as entertainment, but as potential platforms for sharing insight, experience, and human connection. Back in the studio, the actor remained composed, graciously thanking the host and crew. His demeanor was humble and approachable, even as the significance of the moment became clear. He had managed to convey powerful messages about integrity, courage, and authenticity without creating tension or spectacle. The audience, recognizing the care with which he had spoken, applauded warmly, and some even expressed admiration with quiet smiles and nods. It was clear that the moment had affected everyone present, leaving a sense of respect and reflection that would linger long after the cameras stopped rolling. As the show concluded, the host offered closing remarks, acknowledging that this interview had been different, special, and memorable. He praised the actor's thoughtful communication, his calm presence, and his ability to speak with honesty while maintaining warmth and humility. The audience responded with applause, and the energy in the studio remained engaged, reflective, and appreciative. People left with the sense that they had witnessed something rare, a true human moment in a space, usually reserved for performance and entertainment. Outside the studio, discussions continued online and in person. The actor's words had sparked a wider conversation about courage, integrity, and the importance of speaking one's truth. People shared reflections about how small acts of honesty and authenticity can make a significant difference, both in personal life and in public interactions. Some viewers were inspired to rethink how they navigate difficult situations, realizing that it is possible to remain true to oneself without creating conflict or drama. The reach of the interview extended far beyond the show itself, demonstrating the power of thoughtful communication and human connection. Looking back, Part 5 of the interview became more than a conclusion. It became a reflection on the lessons embedded throughout the conversation. The actor's calm, measured words had shown that strength lies not in confrontation, but in clarity, integrity, and authenticity. The audience, both live and remote, carried these lessons with them, inspired by the quiet courage demonstrated on stage. The interview became a reference point for meaningful conversation, a reminder that entertainment can coexist with reflection, honesty, and human insight. In the end, the interview was remembered not just for the topics discussed, but for the manner in which they were addressed. The actor had spoken with humility, strength, and authenticity, creating a moment that transcended the usual expectations of television. Viewers left with a renewed sense of respect for the power of calm, thoughtful speech, and a recognition that one person's quiet courage can influence many, fostering empathy, reflection, and meaningful dialogue. The impact of the interview would continue to be felt long after the studio lights dimmed, showing that human connection, honesty, and integrity can leave a lasting mark in even the busiest, most public spaces.